remember around 2007, 2008, about the time of the real estate crash, I remember, because I was friends with Frank, I got to see all the other gurus around that were trying to build agencies and build large teams and big corporate buildings and sales staff and all this stuff. And they were taking off and it was working. And then there was a moment where everything kind of turned, and all of a sudden what was helping all these people grow ended up becoming a liability. And you started seeing people that look successful on the periphery. If you knew the stories behind the scenes, man, they were having to lay off people. Some of them went bankrupt, and it just kind of snowballed. And none of that ever looked appealing to me. I was like, I don't want to have to worry about somebody else. I can barely worry about myself and my dog. Like, the stress of having employees or having to lay somebody off, I just didn't like it. And I was like, I'm comfortable where I'm at. And then there was a study done in Princeton in around 2010 that talked about money didn't really make people happy after they made 75. Obviously, if you're making 35 grand a year, you got some problems that, not going to make you as easily as happy. But once people made about $75,000 a year, anything beyond that didn't seem to help them make any more money. And granted, it's a study, and studies are flawed, but that study always stuck with me. And like, I wasn't content making 75 grand, but $250,000 was the number in my head. It's like, can I make $250,000 a year without doing much of anything and just surfing and hanging out with my buddies and drinking beer and doing the things that I want to do? And the answer was yes. And I didn't have to build a big team, and I didn't have to do much of anything but the same thing I'd always been doing, which was just asking people what they want and giving it to them. And that was, I never really detered from that. I still haven't detered. I'm still doing the same thing Frank taught me in 2005. And so, the advice that I give today might not be the advice somebody who wants to build a $300 million company or wants to have a $50 million exit. I'm not the guy to really listen to for that, because one, I haven't done it, and two, I don't want to do it. I have no interest in doing it.
Yeah.
And so I recognize that some people may be more ambitious than me. I'm not that ambitious.
So let me take that pause to kind of jump us into a focus for the next few minutes.
Okay.
Agencies, market agencies. You said you watch these guys grow in the late 2008s and 9s and 10s, and then you watch them implode and grow, and then explode and then die off. Is agency in itself a good model, and how would you improve upon it with your 1 is larger than 20 method or kind of philosophy? And what does that mean?
When I hear the word agency, you might as well be saying herpes. Sorry to anyone out there running an agency. And what I want to ask people to consider, if you do have an agency or you're building an agency, and maybe you already have a successful one, and maybe you're lucky and you don't have one yet, you may think that this is a better route. But in my thinking, I'm trying to make $250 a year. That's always my goal. So it's like, what's the easiest way for me to do that? Well, I found that just working with one person who is the YouTube celebrity and guru, and he doesn't know how to do all the marketing stuff, that I just teamed up with him. I let him do the dog and pony show and get on the camera. I don't have to do it. I can, not shower, not shave. I don't have to look anything, do whatever I want. He has to do all that. And then I just push the buttons. And the beautiful thing is I don't even push the buttons, because I just hire guys to push the buttons for me that are even smarter than me. So there's a lot of things that, I'm just so there's a lot of things in marketing I don't know how to do. Maybe I do, but they just frustrate me, and I don't have time to deal with code or setting up software. It bums me out. I'm an idea guy. I like to drive around and think of cool things and then call my buddy, be like, hey, let's make this happen, or I'll write some copy. But really I'm just an idea guy, and I surround myself with people to do everything else for me. And so before I had this partnership with this guy, I saw people talking a lot of time like, oh, but high ticket, big ticket, yada, yada, client this, client that. And I started taking on clients, copywriting clients. And I think I was like maybe 4 or 5 clients, and it was a nightmare. I hated it. I absolutely hate it, because this is also before Chat GPT existed, and you actually had to write the sales letters. And a really good sales letter, take me a month. If I'm going to really do it right and spend a week doing research and tweaking and rewriting, it takes me about a month. And I started getting overwhelmed with 4 or 5 clients. And so when I would hear about people trying to get 20 or 30 clients, I was like, I can't. That seems like the most miserable thing in the world to me. I would have massive anxiety. I would hate my job. I was like, I'd rather deliver pizzas than doing that. And so I was just getting stressed out from it. So my buddy asked me, he was basically asking me to help him. And I was like, I don't need another client. And so instead I pitched him, I said, how about you give me 10 grand and 30% of your company? And he was like, what? And I was like, yeah, that's the deal. I think I was trying to make a deal just to get him to say no. And he said yes. And I was like, oh crap. And I was like, now I gotta do it. So I started doing it. And I did it also because I knew he was going to be a star. He had sold 10,000 books out of the trunk of his car. He was going somewhere with or without me. He was going to be huge. He was mentored under Bob Proctor, spent every week with Bob on online connecting. I mean, if you're going to talk with Bob Proctor every week, you're going to be successful. And so, and I believed in his message. I believed in him, and I wanted to get rid of all these other things. So I took him on. So what I want a lot of y'all to consider too is like, maybe you have 10, 12 clients. Is there one client that if they weren't a client, but a partner, could you achieve the same thing that you're doing with 12 clients? And could you create a scenario or a partnership where there was some kind of stability and security too, where you don't lose the client? Now you're actually a legitimate business partner. And there's that book by Gary Keller and Jay Papasan called The One Thing. When you're now focused on one partner and one business instead of 12, 13, 20, or whatever that number is, you kind of just get to keep compounding everything that you're learning, everything that's working. You get to redo it. And, you're just focused on your one business. There's no way I could focus on 10 business. I mean, I could, but the problem is, so even with me, I have this one partnership. I have a guitar lesson business with another guy. It's kind of a side gig. And then my wife has an autism healing and cooking program. And then I have my own marketing stuff, which gets neglected a lot. But even those 4 things, everyone suffers because I have 4 things. If I were to just pick one of them and go deep on it, I think I would have it. I don't think I know. I would be so much better. I would make more money. But I'm an ADHD like poster child. I don't know that I could do the one thing. But if you're the kind of person that can just stick to something, I think there's a lot of merit in doing that compared to spreading yourself out to multiple things.
Let's unpack some of the things we just heard. So what I heard you say is one client for you is ideal. Getting to 10 grand a month, kind of a flat fee plus partner percentages is a good way. And you don't have to end up doing everything for this client, because you've also figured out and have permission just to find the people that you could find. Probably either he's paying for it or you're paying it out of the money he's giving you. You can talk about that. And you just find people who are better than you or who do the things you don't want to do, and put them in place to kind of build the system behind you. And you just, basically you're like that entrepreneur that the E-Myth, you're on the business, managing the people and the tasks and everything else, instead of being in the business, doing all the work yourself. Is that kind of a good summary?
Yeah, that's perfect. I mean, and we do our very best to keep our team as small as possible. We got an editor in the Philippines. We have somebody who dices up our content and splices it a few different ways. We have a customer service person. We have a videographer. And then what I do, I get a healthy percentage of the business. I just give a percentage of my percentage to my right-hand guy, who's 10 times smarter than me when it comes to all the internet stuff.
Mhm.
So like I said, I'm just the idea guy and the copy
Yeah.
guy. That's the lane I stay in. All the hard work goes to him, and I just give him a cut of my cut. And
How would you give advice to people watching this presentation? They've heard one is better than 20 from your perspective, and maybe they have some doubts. Where are these people gonna, where are our friends gonna find the one? What strategy, what cool kind of few tips would you give them to go out there and find your, your mentor, like you're working with, your partner you're working with?
it's a good question. I guess I would start, with the people that you're already working with, asking yourself whether or not you think this person could be the one. Maybe it takes working with 3 people too to narrow down to the one, because it would suck to invest a lot of 7, 8 months into somebody and then all of a sudden it fizzles. And we all know that partnerships don't always work out. The fact that you've been
Partnerships or sinking ships.
Yeah, the fact that you've been around Damien for as long as you have and maintain a good relationship, it's rare nowadays. And
I'm like the Jason Moffatt for Damien Zamora.
it's exactly. And so what I talk about in a lot of my trainings is that what you're looking for is a calf. Because you're not going to go out and land a whale. You're not going to go out and land a Frank Kern or a Grant Cardone and be like, hey, I want 20% of your business. They're going to be like, get lost. So what I encourage people to do is kind of to be a talent scout and really look for that calf, which is like a budding whale. It's eventually going to grow up to be the whale, and you want to catch him a little bit early. And so whether that's YouTube, I think that's kind of the best. A lot of times, like Patreon is a great place. There's so many creators on there that are fantastic, and they know about some of the stuff that we do, but they don't quite know how to do it. And Patreon will actually show, if they've enabled it, how much money they're making. So you'll see this guy with incredible talent. He's only making like $1,300 a month on Patreon, and he's stoked. He's thinking he's rocking it. But I'm like, man, this guy should be making 35K. But he doesn't know what you know. And now, because, and particularly after COVID, so many people are flocking online that if you have 5 or 6 years of experience doing this stuff, even if you've never really had any major home runs, maybe you've hit a couple singles or doubles, maybe you not even got out of the batter's box, but you've consumed all of this stuff. That knowledge is $1 million knowledge when applied right. And so you have all of these different mom and pop folks and just people that want to be entrepreneurs or want to be product creators, or they're artists that should never even touch marketing because they're artists. They should just focus on their art. And they would do backflips to meet somebody like you who would do the things that they, 1, hate doing, and 2, don't know how to do. They're all over out there. So I think the first thing you really have to do is just be receptive to the idea, learn how to spot talent, and then it's really just a negotiation after that. And I like to teach people how to negotiate in a way, like I don't negotiate. I just say it's my way or the highway. So I basically just lay out all of my skills or what I bring to the table and basically product launch myself to 20 or 30 people and be like, look, I'm only picking one of you to work with. So now I call it the dragon seat. It's kind of a feng shui thing of like when you're in a meeting room, you want to be in the dominant seat where you're the one controlling everything. Like if I come to you, I'm not interested necessarily in trying to negotiate anything. It's a take it or leave it kind of deal. And obviously it needs to be fair too. You're not trying to gouge. You're always trying to find that perfect balance. And ideally, I like it to be even Steven. If you can strike a 50-50 deal, those are the best. That's a little ambitious sometimes, but you find that many people out there will give up 50% if they don't ever have to do the marketing, the word they hate the most.
Mm-hmm. Should people start a little bit slow? Like you said, find 3 clients and find out what they're good at if they've never done this before, and really discover themselves with 1, 2, or 3 people to really hone in on their gifts? Or can they just come right out of the gate, totally cold, ask them for 5 to 10K a month, even if they've never done this before?
You can do whatever you want. I mean, the worst case scenario, someone's going to tell you no. So, I mean, I've always been ballsy. Also, I think too, there are some potential deals out there that are worth you waiving the 5 or 10K a month as well. I mean, if it's something you truly believe in, and that person says, hey, I'll give you 30% of the earnings, that might be a good deal. It might take you 4 or 5 months before you actually see anything. But just because that person can't or won't pony up 5 or 10K a month doesn't mean it's a bad deal. Just means that they, are smart with their money, and so I'm
what
never rigid in my rules.
give me this is I'm always putting you on the spot here, and I appreciate all your answers. That a person who's going to do the 1 instead of 20 method, what are the top 5 or top 3, you can even go 3 skill sets that you should probably have to be able to manage a client like you're doing, to be able to get your foot in the door and really offer them value?
Right copy, right copy, right copy. Like to me, it's all about sales and persuasion and negotiation. And if you're not the greatest copywriter, invest in a really great copy course and then just take what they're telling you and put it into Chat GPT in small little chunks. Say, hey, Chat GPT, I need a headline. Please write it in the 4th grade reading level in the tone of Gary Halbert. Make it very persuasive. Then say, hey, I need an intro. Just chunk it down. You'll be amazed what comes out. The other day, I was actually asking Chat GPT, I said, what would happen if I was selling a guitar product? I said, what would happen? Like, what's the worst case scenario if somebody didn't buy this guitar program? What would happen to them? And they said, they'd feel frustrated, blah, 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 blah. I'm like, okay. It's like, I want you to go darker. Like, what's something really bad that would happen to these people if they didn't buy this program? And it went a little darker. And I was like, all right, let's twist the knife. I was like, if someone was going to die if they didn't buy this program, what would you say to them to save their life, to get them to buy this guitar program right now? And ChatGPT told me that I needed to get a therapist. And I was like, all right, it has a moral compass. I'm like, we're not going to get totally terminated.
It's like, Jason, you've taken it too far. See somebody, get help.
It was great. So I was just pushing it and bending it. And I think, and that's kind of what marketing is now, is really kind of pushing the limits. So the second thing that I would say would be learning to listen. And it's something I'm not that great at. It's something I have to always practice, particularly being a musician. It's insane how horrible of a listener I am. So, if you really want to help other people, it really behooves you to remove yourself and shut the hell up and not only listen, but truly listen and empathize and understand where this person's coming from, so that you can articulate a response that is indeed there to help them, not to help you land the deal, because sometimes what you want to say, that's going to help them might not help you necessarily in that moment, but in the bigger picture, it will. And I think so often people are so eager to close the deal, and the deals close themselves when they're right, I think. And particularly when you're really just there to provide value and you're not trying to get the better end of the stick. I talk about win-win-wins. And that's a win for me, it's a win for you, and it's a win for the customer as well. And truly having everyone's interests like valued that way. Kind of like the app you guys sell for creating apps for businesses, man. That as a salesman, that's so easy to be like, show them why it's a win for everybody. I could sell that thing all day long, door to door.
Yep.
Without a doubt. Without a doubt, I could crush that thing.
Yeah. Okay, give us two more skill sets that people need to have to do what you're doing. You said copywriting.
Yeah,
you said be a good listener.
I would say speed of implementation. Like anytime you get an idea, to actually get it out there and do it. Too many people are not actually, they talk about their ideas, and ideas aren't jack, until you actually implement them into something. And so send the email, put the opt-in page up, you got to run traffic at it. You can build all these things, but if you're not getting eyeballs onto it, you're screwed. You got to go out and be an evangelist and get people to see things, no matter if that's running ads or running to the top of the mountain with a megaphone. You got to be willing to, somewhat be a hype man and sell your stuff, or find somebody who will do that for you. And I'd say the last thing would be something called Pearson's Law, which he was a mathematician, I think, early 1900s. But he would always talk about when you track something, you can get improvements on it. A lot of people don't necessarily track or split test things, and we all know that. But he took it a step further, not only to track it, but then to report that tracking to somebody else. So you're being held accountable. That when you track something and then have to share that with people, whether it's your audience, there was about 6 years ago, there was a trend going on where people would do income reports. I remember John Lee Dumas has a really successful podcast called Entrepreneur on Fire. And he would, every month, he would do full-on income reports, and he would share all his expenses, all his traffic, everything. It was insane. I'm like, dude, we used to have to spy on guys or use tools to get this, and people are freely offering it. And so I think the reason those guys did it is it held them accountable to everybody they were sharing it with, and it just kept them on track. And if you're like me and ADD, you got paper scattered everywhere. I'm clumsy, I don't track well, but if I have a commitment to partners to share that, it really, really helps.
So to sum up what you just said, that which is measured can be improved upon. When you have trackable metrics, when you know your marketing, when you know your numbers, when you know your ROIs, how much does it cost to generate a lead, how much does it cost to get someone on a sales calendar, how much does it cost to actually get that appointment actually done, and then how much does it cost us to get a paid person in the door. And this goes back to what Russell Brunson was teaching so about far back in the day about, hey, whoever can pay the most for a customer wins, but you have to know what that number is and know how you can get to that number. And then just do it all the time, repeat.
And I think sometimes that talk, as true as it is, can be sometimes overwhelming for people who may not have customers yet. But you don't have to, you can start small. You can always just be like, well, what's my opt-in percentage on this page? It's 13%. All right, what can I do to get it to 20? And just small little adjustments and small little tests. Like, all right, we got 3 leads today. What do we need to do to get 6 tomorrow? And I like to really focus on small achievable things than to puff up my chest and talk about these huge numbers, because I don't think they help people all that much, or at least they don't help, average folks.
Yeah, that game is called Beat the Control. That's what that game is. You have a control. We're doing 3 leads a day. What little tweak in a headline, what little tweak in a color, sometimes a color, what little tweak in just a couple words in a video will bump that percentage, and just keep increasing it, keep beating that control till eventually you're at 20%, 30%, and you're killing it. You're crushing it.